All right, everybody. So welcome, and hopefully everybody's having a good morning so far with this beautiful snowstorm here in the Midwest. Let's go around and start off with something new and good. Let's go to Angela. Something new and good on the business?
I had a number of biz dev contacts yesterday. I mean, I've been rolling through things. Got a publication out to our internal blog, and working on repurposing that to be a few other publications. And it also just circulating a draft turned into a couple client, oh, I have a client who's asking about this, and so just overall a lot of great things happened.
All right, terrific. Let's go to Rob.
Yeah, I had a good week. I had a big meeting that Steve, you and I actually talked about one-on-one that you helped me prepare for. And I used good stuff from the class for it. So it was a curiosity meeting, not a needs-based meeting, that a friend of mine at a very large company set up. And I roped in my managing partner. My friend brought in one of the in-house counsel. And we had a good back and forth conversation. I asked a lot of good questions. And what it led to is they don't really have a need for me, for what I do, the type of litigation that I do, at least not at the moment. But what came out during the meeting from all the different questioning is that they do have a need for good bankruptcy counsel, and bankruptcy counsel that's not charging like $1,000 an hour, like a lot of them do.
Sure.
And we have bankruptcy counsel within our office. I don't do it, but we do have bankruptcy counsel within our office. And so then that led to a further correspondence and discussion and connecting between my partner who does bankruptcy and this new client. And, we'll see what happens, but that could be a really great origination for me where I don't even have to do the work.
Yeah.
And it all came from I didn't get on the call and, say, well, I'm a commercial litigator. And they're like, we don't have any commercial litigation. And I would be, okay, I'll see you later. We kept the conversation going and it uncovered this need they have, which could be a really good thing. So thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. And thank you for executing. I mean, that's great because again, we go in with a pitch and then we're prescribing without diagnosing. And so you took an opposite approach and ended up with a very favorable, I think, result in the next step. So good stuff. Let's go to Jeremy.
I do these every year, but this year in particular, I kind of ramp them up with some strategic partners. I do these employment law updates for a bunch of different organizations, and they usually do it for a couple local SHRMs. But this year I'm doing it with 3 strategic partners who are insurance brokers, and all of their clients attend. So I did 2 last week, each had 100 attendees, and I'm doing another one next week. Hopefully it'll be about the same. And 1 or 2 people have contacted me afterwards. We're going to set up meetings in the next couple weeks.
I do want to put something on the hot list today, guys, for Jeremy and for anyone else that's doing any presentations. I just want to talk about, I'm just going to write down presentation best practices. And it's not about how to help you be a better speaker. That's a different subject, but it's just a couple of little things. And Shuki and I have been talking a lot about this because we've got a program coming up and some of you have been kind enough to invite some of your friends, but and we want to talk about, what are we doing to really have the best possible follow-up? How are we going to actually capture business, not just build a brand or give advice? So I'd like to just take a few minutes on that before we get into some of the hot stuff. Alex?
Good morning, everybody. Had a pretty good week last week. I participated in a video interview with a family law, with the main partner of a family law group. She tapes these and then puts them on her LinkedIn website, YouTube. So went about 10 minutes. I think I did okay. I think I presented pretty well. So that should be up soon, I guess. Also, I was introduced to an employment partner at Fox Rothschild through a mutual acquaintance. So still, getting out there and trying to meet new potential strategic partners. The conversation went well. We had a lot of common experiences, so that was good. But yeah, other than that, it was a good week. Stayed busy.
Okay.
And the Packers lost, so that was good.
That was a bit bittersweet because on one hand, the people from Chicago hate the Packers, but we also are not favorable about Tom Brady. Most of us, we've got some attitude about it. So it was a bit of a mixed feeling.
It was better than nothing.
Better than nothing. All right, let's go to John.
It is better. You know, I spent a lot of time with it, and Brady threw 3 interceptions, right?
Okay.
So it's like,
all right.
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
Something for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's about as best as we could do. Pretty good week. I had a settlement conference in front of a magistrate, and it went really well, and the case resolved. And I had co-counsel in that case that I didn't really know, and it was actually our first time to get to kind of be working on something at the same time, in court, so to speak. And it went really well, and she and I had a good conversation afterward about what we each do and how we could potentially help the other. I've got a former client that I've kept in touch with and been keeping in touch with over the past couple of weeks. And I was talking to him about some of his issues, and it came up that he had another need, and signed the engagement letter for a new matter with him. So
nice.
Pretty decent week.
Good deal. Good deal. Staying in touch, guys. It's amazing what can happen, right? I mean, it's like you go from nothing to something real fast just from keeping in touch. Gary?
Yeah, I had a really interesting curiosity meeting yesterday that was arranged by a coworker in our marketing department, and it was interesting on a couple of fronts. It was interesting because it wasn't just myself and this outside consultant in total rewards and HR, but it was with myself and another one of my coworkers over a span of only 30 minutes. And so it really forced me to tighten up the questions and getting to know this person that's doing total rewards and such. And because of that, it really, I think it worked out to be a twofer. My colleague will be handling certain aspects of executive comp, and I'll probably be doing some health and welfare and other retirement work follow-up. So it was just very interesting. I was holding my breath, not sure, because obviously the others on the call haven't had the same training and how that was going to go, but it worked out well. It worked out really well. And I think it's going to lead to some follow-ups with some crossover work. So
okay.
The system works.
Good. Hey, and just real quick update, Chucky and I are working hard on building the number of people coming to the 2021 planning event that we're running on Friday. And we've already got, I think, 63 people signed up. We'd like to get it to 70. So if there's anyone else that you guys want to send, it's right on my website under the events page. It's real easy to find. And if there's anyone that you think might be a good connection for me, or that you think would get value out of having a planning session, we're going to talk about, developing that plan. We're going to talk about setting goals. We're going to talk about improving your LinkedIn profile, kind of getting ready for battle. So that's something definitely, I'd love to see a few more people come to that. And then also the, peer advisory is really working. I've got 2 Rainmaker roundtables now fully built. And then I've also got the business developer roundtable, which is where you guys would go once you're completed with this program. Where you go? Well, you go into a peer advisory group with other successful Fretzin alumni, and you can keep your progress going in a peer advisory space versus a coaching training space. Because quite frankly, by the time I'm done with you, you guys should all be able to teach what I'm teaching you anyway. I mean, Rob's been in the program for 2 weeks. He's already talking about curiosity meetings and needs-based meetings. I want to, give him a big smooch through the screen if I could. He knows how to get to my heart, that and glazed donuts. Al, how you doing?
Good.
You want to real quick jump in and share something new and good?
So I guess my something new and good this week was, that I just committed to making a plan for this week to get back on my LinkedIn schedule and make 3 specific contacts. So, I got the LinkedIn piece done, and now I got to get those 3 calls made today. So, or 3 emails sent out, but that's on the calendar. So
Okay.
That's what I got.
Yeah, but
and-
you put it down on the calendar and then you execute, and then next thing you know, you got a bunch of meetings. So we just
yeah, and I
can't
think
let, say again?
your podcast yesterday, the one that launched yesterday, was very good on that. I thought it was.
Yeah, with Sarah
particularly good.
Tidlow, I think it is.
Yeah, that was a real nice, tight 20 minutes or whatever it was. It was short.
Yeah,
Seemed kinda
she's
short, but
like an
very useful.
efficiency. She's like
Yeah.
an efficiency expert for lawyers. So you guys may
Yeah.
want to check that out just to pick up a couple. Was there one tip, and I'm putting you on the spot now, but was there one tip you took away that you thought was pretty good?
Well, part of it is the writing down for sure. But one thing I thought that kind of struck home in particular was something she said about basically the idea that one of the things that it's hard for us to do, especially as lawyers, is kind of manage our to-do list and kind of put things off. We kind of get mixed up sometimes when you should say, okay, I know I have to get this done, but I don't have to do it right now. I can schedule it for later.
Yep.
And then that kind of allows you to keep pace with other things like business development. But a lot of times it's hard. Like if you get a request in from a client, even though you know maybe it's not really needed until next week, or this brief isn't due, you're just like, well, I just got to knock it out right now. And so I think, and sometimes that can kind of, muddle and lead you to kind of procrastinate other things and be less efficient. So I think that was a good tip.
And you guys, I don't know, maybe I hate to put you guys on the spot, but a show of hands, how many of you are listening to the podcast, at all, or on a fairly regular basis? Show of hands. Okay. It's pretty good. I mean, I would say you don't have to listen to them all, but I think if you scroll on my website or on Apple or wherever you see it, there might be a particular person or title or something that connects with you. Like if you wanted to know like how to be a stronger specialist, right? You're going to want to listen to Scott Becker. I mean, he's created a space for himself in the healthcare world that's undeniable. I mean, even as now a marketing company around healthcare, because he was so successful in his personal branding. And he talks about how he did it. I mean, he's basically giving you like, this is how I did it. You could do it too. And so, any efficiency, it could be on LinkedIn, it could be on whatever. But I think in addition to what I'm sharing with you, I think I'm interviewing some pretty high level folks in the industry that you guys might enjoy. So I'm just putting it out there for you. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to talk a little bit about the hot list for today and just kind of get that going. So what I was thinking about was, let me just make this bigger, that we just take a minute or two to talk about presentation best practices, because even though some people would say presentations have kind of died out, I think not so much. I think people are hungry for content. And if you ask around or open your eyes and talk to people, that there's a bunch of associations and different groups that are looking for speakers and looking for, value for their members who are basically, dry right now in what's going on. So I'd like to talk about that. Is there another hot list item that one of you, a challenge that you're going through, something that you want to bring up to the group that you think is relevant? I can take one or two.
Challenge that I had preparing for yesterday's curiosity meeting is when the person that you're going to be meeting with has a very minimal LinkedIn profile, or it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of information out there, short of hiring a private investigator or really stalking them, just getting ready for those informational meetings. I was able to find an article that they wrote and talk about that. So I felt somewhat relieved, but it was a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, no, I get it. So we can roundtable that. I don't know. That's going to be, I think, a pretty quick one to discuss, and we'll probably just tell you too bad, but no, we'll figure it out. What else? Well, you got one more? Guys are good? All right. So let's take a few minutes and just roll through these two. So who on the call either has made a presentation in the last 12 months? Let me see hands. A presentation in the last 12 months. Do you all feel comfortable getting in front of people and speaking? Rob, are you comfortable? I'm sure you're comfortable with that. You're a maniac. I don't even have to hear your answer. John? No
Yeah.
problem. Okay. How do you guys feel about speaking as a way to build your brand, or even more importantly, to develop business? Has that been effective for anybody at doing both?
It has been for me. I try to do something that's a little bit more than just give the presentation. So I do two things. I do like either like a survey, like a very brief survey, and then in exchange for completing the survey, I offer something that could be some value. So like right now, the COVID vaccination thing is a big issue that a lot of our clients are dealing with. And so I have some model vaccination policies.
Okay.
And so at the end of my presentations, I just say, you know, got this model vaccination policy. If you fill out this survey and connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll send it your way.
Okay. That's great. And I want to expand on that, but I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Any other people that have gotten real value from making presentations?
I mean,
Angela?
I've had some success doing internal presentations as a way to build my cross marketing within my firm, and just providing, group partners of like, hey, here's some regulatory developments in the past year, some high levels, the takeaways, how this affects your clients. And every time I've done that, I walk away with a handful of questions, and it's a way that I build relationships across my firm.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to build relationships, whether that's internally or externally. If you're on a panel with a GC and a CFO, I mean, now you have and the moderator could be from a consultant from a company. Well, there's 4 opportunities just within the people that are in the groups presenting, and then on top of that, there's the audience. So I think there's a number of values there. And obviously, we could take a lot of time to talk about, how to have such an impactful presentation or such a quality presentation that, like when I don't know if you guys know this, but when you do that in a live setting, usually like there's a line of people to talk to you. They're so impressed with what you said or the way you conducted yourself that they've got questions and they kind of line up for your card, or they line up to talk with you. That's how you sort of know that you're doing a good job. Or also not seeing, 100 people on their phones, which I was at a forensic expert association one time, and the guy who spoke before me basically just read his slides and looked down the whole time. And within 15 minutes, every single head in the room was looking down at their phone. And then it was my job to I was the next speaker. So it was like, hey, this guy just bombed, and now I have to go on and try to revive the group. But I enjoyed that. It was a good challenge. But I think it's a good brand building exercise internally at your firm or externally. What Jeremy said is maybe the most important thing, though, is it's not just about giving the presentation. It's about how you set up for follow-up. Okay, is everybody with me? That's really the key. If you set up for follow-up, you have a real chance of getting business. If you don't, it just kind of happens and then it's gone. And then you feel like, yeah, maybe you had some value, but that's really the end of it. And if somebody happens to call you, great, but it doesn't always happen that way. So how does a survey for value, Jeremy, then help with next steps?
So it keeps the ball rolling, right? A lot of people just attend and walk away.
Yep.
But there are a fair number of people who would be the ones who would stick around and talk to you afterwards. And that's the person you want to capture, right? So if the survey keeps you engaged with them, it opens up the dialogue, and then you set up a curiosity meeting or a needs-based meeting if you're able to identify something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's really the end goal, is if you can find a curiosity meeting or a needs-based meeting with a prospective client or a high-end strategic partner, that's going to be really helpful in getting value for the time. You put time into preparing, you put time into putting the PowerPoint, you had to do the administrative work, the CLE, whatever it might be, and then you took the time to present, and then to not get all the value or all the squeeze out of that orange that you can. The thing that Chucky and I are doing is we're setting up a different survey where we're going to get some feedback, but at the end of the survey, we're going to ask, do you have interest in learning more about what Fretzin does for attorneys? And then they're going to have a box that says yes and a box that says no. Now, this is for us, not for you. You might have a different approach to it, but what's the value of a question like that?
Gets you to know right away.
We're getting to the know right away. Now, that doesn't mean we can't follow up with 70 participants. We can email them. We can put them on our newsletter. We can connect with them on LinkedIn. There's lots of ways to do it. But at the end of the day, do you or do I have time to, meet with 70 people or 60 people? The answer is that don't have interest. The answer is absolutely not. No one does. All right. So if we could take that 60 people or whatever the number is, and we can knock it down to 10, 5, and they're qualified as interested, that's going to be important for us to do as a next step. Okay. How would you tweak that last question for you? Because you're not going to say, Jeremy, do you have a lawsuit that you want me to litigate for you? Yes or no? I mean, that's not going to be a question you would ever ask. So how do you guys think about phrasing a question at the end of a survey that might be a positive next step to get answered by an audience of, let's say, 50? And let's say that they're general counsels, they're CEOs, they're HR directors, they're people of reasonable level and status. What would be a good question? Anybody have a feeling about that?
Sorry, go ahead.
John? No, John, you go, then Jeremy.
I was gonna say, have you or your company encountered any of the issues discussed today?
Okay, so they say yes. Now what? You follow up with them to just say, hey, you signed yes. And I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad one. I'm not trying to shoot it down. I guess I just want you guys to wordsmith it in such a way that it's gonna get you to, either not the finish line, but on the right path. And I think you're onto something, John. Any ideas or thoughts about how to tweak that to get it a little tighter?
Could you ask if there are any questions that they did not have an opportunity to ask?
Okay, so they might say yes, and then maybe
if they want to be contacted, to talk about it.
Okay, good. So now they're being proactive and saying, yeah, contact me. I've got some questions. Good. Okay.
The last question on my survey is something like, would you be interested in talking to Jeremy about human resources issues that are coming up at work right now?
Okay, so again, they've got some and they want to talk to you, and now you're getting a proactive yes on the survey. You can follow up, within 24 hours. Okay. John, the other thing I was thinking about, as you said yours, that might be a good lead in to another question. So maybe that's like, if you have 4 questions, that's number 3. And then number 4 is, maybe taking an action to set up a meeting or something like that. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah. I mean, to me, a positive response to either one of those questions, would at least be worth following up on.
Yeah. So I think what we're saying here, just to kind of put it to, put it in a summary format, it's really about setting up with who's running this event. If you're running it like I'm running it with Chuki, it's a no-brainer. We can set it up any way we want. We decide what the survey questions, we decide if it's CLE or not, whatever. But when you're working with the association, events person or the in-house at your firm, that's the person you need to talk to get the survey laid out in a way that's going to be effective for you. Okay. If you miss that step and then it comes and goes, well, you only have yourself to blame. The other thing I'll mention is that not all of them are going to be open to changing the surveys or the questions. And you might say, well, can I get the list of the attendees, or can I have, just asking for things to see where their flexibility is, because it might, even if you get the list, let's say we get a list of 50, we don't do a survey, but we get the list. Maybe we could email them with some questions, or we could email them with, do they have an interest in having a conversation based on what they heard in the presentation? They may have some gaps in their risk or whatever. Okay. So this is what we need to do to be more effective with these presentations, to get a next step involved that's going to help you engage. Okay. So I think we covered that. And if there's any other questions you have about that, then you could engage me and we can talk about it further on an individual basis. Okay. The other point that was brought up from Gary, I think, was a lack of online info for a meeting. Do you guys have any suggestions or thoughts about what do you do when you go to look at someone's LinkedIn or Facebook and there's just not a lot there?
I've had this happen, and it is bothersome. My my only advice is, if you have happened to found this person through a friend, or you've been put in touch with them, maybe you can go back and talk to that source and say, look, I looked around to try to find out a little bit more about Steve or Bill. Can you tell me what he's like?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the best suggestion that there is, because if they're not on Facebook and LinkedIn, I mean, you can also obviously Google them and see if that does anything to help. But again, there's some people that have really avoided or not been out there where they're going to have a presence on even Google. I mean, if you Google my name, this is not an ego thing. This is just a reality. I have so much stinking content that it probably goes on for 20, 30 pages of all the articles and videos and stuff I've done. There's other people where you pull them up and their name is Bob Smith, and there's no chance, or you put Bob Smith attorney, Cleveland, whatever, and you're just struggling to find information. So I love the idea of going back to however you met that person and trying to get some additional information that way. Any other suggestions that haven't been addressed or brought up here? Does that kind of cover it? Yep. Okay. All right, guys. So let's go into the workshop today. We're going to really wrap up sales-free selling today with the financial step and the presentation step. You guys have been biting at the, chomping at the bit to make your pitch, to, do your presentation or whatever after all this hard work that I've put you through. And now it's time to do that. Now, Rob, who do we have here? Because I want to meet your young man here. What do we got?
This is Alexander. He's my youngest of 5.
Okay.
And,
Hi, Alexander. How you doing, buddy?
You say, how you doing?
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
There we go.
Okay. Well, very good. Alexander, you want to learn something about business development for lawyers like your daddy? Oh, he can't hear because he didn't have the headphones. Okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
Moving
Sorry
right
about
along. That was our brief intermission. That was
Yeah.
a palate cleanser, if you will. Moving into our next point here. So
Steve, you clearly need more Paw Patrol in the presentation. Just saying.
so am I so old that if I say the name The Wiggles, that no one knows what I'm talking about?
Oh, I've seen the Wiggles live too many times to count.
Oh, there's still a thing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I also have
They're on
older
YouTube
kids, but yeah.
now, so
What was that, Angela?
I think they're on YouTube now.
Okay. Now I saw them live too, and I you can't get that time back, everybody. All right, so we're talking about sales-free selling. All right. Somebody help me define, what is that? What is sales-free selling? We know what selling is, and we know we hate it. What sales-free selling is as it relates to the process that we've been through for the last few weeks?
It's developing business without being too overt about it in your approach, and listening to your client or potential client, and being open to their story, and seeing if you're a good fit to be able to help them out.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, Alex. Thank you. That was really.
I know, sorry, I just started
No.
going.
I mean that in a positive. Like, it's all about a fit. It's not about selling, pitching, or convincing, right? It's about building relationships, being a consultant, asking questions, listening, demonstrating empathy. And at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out, is this person qualified to keep moving forward, or is this person unqualified, disqualified, and move them out? And that doesn't mean forever, and it doesn't mean that you can't stay friends or be a resource, but your time is limited, and we have to be sure that we're using a process that's going to get to what's real, and we want to get to what's moving forward. Do you want to move forward with someone who isn't real or isn't being honest with you? The answer is probably not. So what are the steps leading up to where we are in where we're going to cover today, meaning the financial and presentation? What's the first step? And we're talking about a needs-based meeting. We're talking about where we've identified a legal need. What's the first thing that we're doing in a meeting to start to build, the structure here? Help me out.
Relationship building.
Al said relationship. Okay, Al, give me two bullet points on that. Relationship meaning what? What are we trying to accomplish?
Just kind of build that foundation so we can work to the next steps. A personal connection. So, maybe it's an alma mater in common, or
Okay.
both have kids who play hockey or something like that.
Right. So I use the two words natural affinity. You can use whatever you want, but the idea here, how do you spell likability? That's the question.
ROB.
I don't have to spell anything because I got spell check and I'm just becoming dumber every day. So the idea here is we're trying to build a foundation of trust and likability, and we do that through finding common ground, natural affinities. When we build that foundation, I love the fact that Al used the word foundation because that's where it all starts. Okay, we don't want to start answering questions about rates and what we do and everything right from the beginning. We want to get them into a dialogue through research, through finding that common ground, getting them talking about, like Rob and I are talking about the kids, and we're, and all that. That's a great place to go if we want to just not jump into business right away. Okay. Once we've established that relationship, John, where do we go from there?
Agenda.
All right. Why are we setting an agenda? Why don't we just have a meeting? We don't need all this structure.
Part of it is about sort of establishing control of the meeting and not making it about the whole time.
Okay.
The other part is kind of,
what does taking control of the meeting do for us in this process?
well, we want to be the ones asking the questions. And, this is an opportunity to ask questions and sort of establish that that's how it's going to go. It's
Okay.
also an opportunity to, sort of get some buy-in from the other side. And so if things start to go, I shouldn't have said the other side, but it's not the enemy. But from the person that you're talking to, get some buy-in. And so if it starts to go a little bit sideways, you can sort of bring it back to things that you agreed on when you were setting the agenda.
Yeah. And the only thing I'd add to that is again, it's another opportunity to talk about a fit. It's another opportunity to have an outcome of moving this forward or moving this out. And again, I don't want anybody to freak out about moving something out. I want you to own it. I want you to appreciate it, enjoy it, that you've moved someone out that's not qualified to work with you. Do you move someone out that is qualified to work with you? Depending on the qualifications, no. Why would you? But if they're not qualified for one of a number of reasons, why not move them out and invest your time with people that are real? Okay. So how do we find that out? What is a step that we do to ensure that we understand if there's a fit, that we can help someone solve a problem? What is that? Jeremy?
Discovery.
Okay. Discovery
One and
1
2.
and 2. And maybe take us through in a Reader's Digest version of what is Discovery 1 and 2?
I mean, it's basically to get the prospect to identify apparent needs and then move them to compelling reasons to work with you.
Right. I can't type and talk at the same time is my problem. Compelling reasons. So give me an example, somebody of what an apparent reason would sound like and what a compelling reason would sound like in an interview. You're meeting with a prospective client. They told you their apparent reason. You did a bunch of questioning and you took it down to a compelling reason. What does that sound like? Gary, you have an example you can give? And it doesn't have to be a real example. You could just make it up, but give me 2 sentences, one that's apparent and one that's compelling. How do they sound different?
So one is more, the apparent reason is just more general, just frustrating at work, dealing with colleagues. So, okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. And then they start getting into some details that they're short-staffed or they had a bad hire, you're just not getting the work done. Then you can start asking follow-up questions, how that impacts the business, how it impacts them on a personal level, what that's going to mean for them going forward, what are the costs, what does that look like? And then you start getting into the nitty-gritty. So
we're taking something that's just clearly obvious and easily shared, right? I'm not happy with my current lawyer. That's just a common thing someone can. I'm not happy with my current lawyer's responsiveness. I'm not happy with my current lawyer's rates. The service has been poor. Okay. then when you hear the compelling reason, it's that, that son of a, and that whatever, and they're screwing me, and it's getting emotional and personal. And that's really how we know we have a compelling reason, is when we take something that is just easily said down and we question it down to the point where it gets emotional and personal. And is that gonna happen in every situation of meeting with a prospective client? The answer is no. No, it's just not. But are you still getting more information from them than you would if you never asked those questions in the first place? Yeah, it still counts. You just may not be getting someone to cry in your arms. It does, a CFO at a $50 million company isn't going to start weeping in front of you openly in most cases. I mean, that happens to me all the time with CFOs I meet, but that's for a different reason. And I don't even know what that is. But anyway, so we get through discovery. We've identified compelling reasons for them to change, okay? Not to hire us, but to change their current situation. Then how do we back that up and support those compelling reasons? What's the next step? Let's go with Angela. You're new, but what do you think? We just went over this in the last couple of weeks. Thoughts?
Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
No problem. I was calling on you on unannounced, and you're also newer, but I'll step in for you. We want to get commitment, right? We want to get commitment that they're ready to change, and they want to change now. If they want to change and it's urgent, but they want to change in a year, does that sound right to you? Somebody has a problem and it's urgent. We need to change now, right? Again, not saying sign here. We're not asking for the business at this point. What we're doing is we're asking, are they in a position to change? I mean, if they hem and haw, what does that tell you?
They're not really hungry for change.
Yeah, they may not be qualified. They might be lying. And I'm not trying to say all buyers are liars, but that does rhyme. So there you go. So we want to understand if it's a must fix as a really important element of how we're going to get someone to move forward with urgency. You guys don't want to have to chase after someone for 6 months, right? So identifying their urgency and getting them to commit to change, even if it's not with you, at least it's a commitment to do something different. That leads us to do what? Where do we go after there, Jeremy?
Next is decision maker, right?
Yep. And what is that all about?
So that's making sure that the person you're talking to is the person who's going to make the decision. And then if not, figuring out a way to get in front of the decision maker, or as sort of a last resort, prepare this person to get in front of the decision maker for you.
Yeah, so we can go back to Rob's example from earlier. He had a friend of his set up a meeting, and your friend wasn't the decision maker, so he got you in front of the GC who is the decision maker. Was that brought up? Is there any other decision makers involved with that opportunity, or does it end? The day begin and end with that GC?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had more discussion about who else would be involved in the decision-making process for sure.
And the answer was no one really, or were there more?
No,
people?
in that situation, he wasn't the final decision maker. Like if he wanted to retain our firm, for a bankruptcy matter, there's other people that he would have to talk to. And so now we need to get in front of not just him, but try to get in front of the people that actually, make the decision.
So the goal is anytime you're engaging with someone who's not the decision maker, it's to flip them into an advocate. We want them to be our advocate, where they like us, trust us, and feel good that we would be a good person to solve problems. And they want to make a high level introduction into the right people. Okay. And you might have to coach them through that process a little bit, but that's really the key. What if the GC said to you, I don't really handle the bankruptcy at my big corporation. Send me some information and I'll pass it on to the right people. What do we think about that? John, what do you think about that?
I think that's not ideal.
Okay, why?
Well, I mean, there may be something lost in translation, and you can't really count on a person to do the same type of job that you would do. And so it would be preferable if you could be sort of involved in that next step.
Yep. So we're looking again to have the advocate advocate. And that doesn't happen through passing some papers, through an email. We need to get in front of the right people and take the extra time to do it, because it could be the difference between getting the business or not getting the business. We can't take shortcuts. Shortcuts lead to missed opportunities. So we want to make sure with this type of a process, relationship is the foundation, sets up the agenda. The agenda sets up discovery. Discovery sets up commitment, decision maker, and then where we're going is today is financial qualification, which is a super quick step. It could be 1 or 2 questions leaking into presentation, and how do we present to people to get across the finish line with the least amount of effort necessary to do it. Okay, we're not looking to do a full, what do they call, dog and pony show or whatever. We don't need that. Sometimes we just need to do the minimal to get across the finish line based on what they need to see, hear, or experience. So with that, I'm going to jump in and give you guys a quick overview on the finances. And I just want you to, again, in most instances, this is going to be a very quick step for you guys. And so I want to hit it because it's important, but it's not going to be a focus point. You might identify the answer to this in one question. So essentially, it's how the cost information uncovered in the discovery step can be used when discussing budgets. There's a number of strategies for finding budgets and evaluating that client on the 4 qualifiers prior to moving to the presentation. Okay, so let's think about this. If you're identifying that, Bob Smith has revealed the company's losing a lot of money and it's adding up, it could actually minimize your fees. I mean, your fees could end up being a drop in the bucket. So you can say something like, before we talk about a solution to the issues that we've been discussing, I'd like to take a moment to review our conversations. You told me this costing your company $100,000. You stand to lose 125 next year. That's all adding up. What are you considering is an investment to solve these kinds of hundreds of thousands of dollars of problems every year? And you obviously can adjust the language on that, but it's reviewing the cost and talking about what have they budgeted for this. And they might say whatever it takes, or they might say, we've got 50,000, or they might say, just whatever the rates are, we're going to pay. Okay. So looking at uncovering these, and you guys am I sharing my screen or no?
No.
All right. Well, that would have been good to know. Because somebody texted me. Thank you. All right. You didn't miss anything there. So, hang on. Okay. So this is just a couple different approaches that I'm going to suggest that you guys consider. And it's not using them all, and it's not, using them every time. Let me give an example. If I'm talking with so let's say I'm a lawyer and I'm with a mid-market firm, and I'm talking to a GC who's been paying $850 an hour, $750 an hour, whatever. And I know that they're willing to pay that or a little less, that they'd be thrilled to pay just, a little less. And I identify that. I'm not going to come in at $300 an hour, and I wouldn't anyway. And I'm not going to come in at $1,200 an hour because I'm not a big firm. But knowing that information about who they worked with might be all I need to know to identify that they've got a budget to work with me at a mid-market firm. Okay. So here are some different strategies for uncovering budgets that would be helpful to just, again, add another question to your repertoire of questions. Okay. So number 1 is thinking about their past experiences. Where have they spent in the past, which is what I just shared with you. Another one is just asking them about their budget. I know, you mentioned to me that you've spent, that your legal spend is around $100,000 a year. Are you comfortable, staying at that level or just a little under that, or is that, not something that you're prepared to pay to protect yourself in 2021, for example? Okay. But it's just asking the question. But again, doing it after, this isn't like the first question you're going to ask. This is after you've been, asking questions and getting relationship built and trust built for a half an hour, right? Maybe over 2 or 3 meetings. I mean, sales-free selling can happen in 45 minutes, the whole thing soup to nuts. It can happen over the course of months, depending on how far you're getting in the process with the people you're talking to. Okay. ROI is asking, what do they generally invest to solve a problem? What have you been investing every year to solve these problems? In our, just so I have an idea. And again, they're willing to share that with you because you're a lawyer and you've asked good questions and they trust you. And then the last resort is, let's say that they've got their cards on their vest. They're not sharing anything with you as it relates to rates, firms they've worked with, anything that would give you an idea about where they're coming in. You can actually give them a low number and a high number, which might chase them back to the low number. So let's say that your average fee is $450, okay? And you've seen people at your firm get rates as high as $750, but that's not typically what happens. And you know that the company you're dealing with would be at the $450 level. You could say, well, let me ask him, our rates, depending on how we staff it and time and everything else, on the low end, we're going to be around $450, $500 an hour. And on the high end, I've seen some clients, in the $750, $800 an hour. Are you comfortable, within that range? And they go, oh yeah, at the $450, $500, we're right on the money, or we're fine with that. Well, that's what you want to hear, because you gave them a high number really just to chase them back to where you wanted them anyway. So that's how we can identify a budget when they're not opening up to you. Now, what happens, John, when they say the following? $550, I've been paying a local suburban attorney, $300 an hour for the last 10 years. That would never be a rate I could ever handle. What do you do at that point?
I think you some more gentle way of saying, how's that working out for you?
Okay. So John's point is continue to. So remember, this step doesn't happen on an island. This step only happens, the financial step only happens after you've done the previous steps, right? It's like a stairwell going up. Let's say in the discovery step, John, you identified that he's been paying excessively for hours, inefficient hours. That's been one of his biggest complaints at $300 an hour. The guy's making mistakes. He's screwing up. He's losing lawsuits. All kinds of bad things have been going on. Couldn't you then play that off as why your fees are higher, or why this is costing him a lot more because he's been jumping over dollars to get to dimes, if you know what I'm saying, right? So is that how you would address it? Something like that?
That would be great if that came up during discovery, that there's a difference between, $500 an hour for an efficient lawyer and $320 an hour for an inefficient lawyer. And it's and the first one's better.
It kind of makes sense, right? Let me put it another way. Let's say that his lawyer, that he's just not willing to pay your fees. He's looking for a law firm at $350 an hour, and he's not really willing to go higher than that. And you've laid out that you're $450 on the bottom end. So what would you say if there's no way of turning that around after addressing it? Then what?
You could talk about getting an associate involved.
Let's say that's off the table. That's at $450, right? Getting associates involved. Alex?
I mean, moving to a no.
It's possible that this person is just not a good client. If your fees are here and he's not willing to, no matter how good you are, break off of where the number is. And we all do this. I mean, if you're willing to pay someone $150 an hour to fix something in your home, like a handyman type of situation, right? And you've got someone that says, I'm $250 an hour, and that's just not something you're willing to do. So that handyman can move you to a no and move on and find other business. It's okay to disqualify someone that isn't seeing value in what you do or isn't going to pay your rates for any reason. Move them to a no and move on. It's okay. Be okay with it. All right. There's more fish in the ocean. We just have to move some fish this way and some fish that way. All right. But the financial step helps you to identify who's willing and able to invest and work with you and who's not. And that's why the qualifier exists. That's why it's one of our steps. So another couple detail point here is, what's the time frame to obtain the funds? Any paperwork? Is there a legal department this has to go through? This could be part decision maker, part financial step. Okay. And I want to wrap up with oh yeah, Angela.
Steve, so I have a question. I mean, we've been talking about, discussing budget in terms of an hourly rate. how would you set up this conversation if you are talking more of, how much is this matter going to cost me, and kind of trying to unpack what the client's expectations are for say, I'm pitching you a program, sort of a more of a fixed fee project, but
Yep.
let's talk about what you're thinking goes into that project, because my number can change depending on what you want me to do.
Well, again, this is where discovery is so important, because not only are you looking to find the needs that they have and what the solution. So the solution, and what we're going to talk about getting into presentation is, I mean, you're kind of ahead of the game here, which is fine, but we want to present to solve the problems. If they told you they've got 5 problems and they're all important to solve, that's what we want to pitch them, is the solution for those 5 problems. And the package or the hourly or the fixed rate that you're coming up with does that. Okay. And if they want to piecemeal it or they want to mix it up or in whatever, then that could be something that's negotiated later on. But we want to not only find out what their needs are, but how, what happens if this doesn't change, and what's it cost them to not have these solutions in place or to not have these problems solved. And so that's why in Discovery 2, we talk a lot about trying to identify cost and impact. And I'll give you a quick example. If I identify that a lawyer has a $250,000 book, and I identify all the gaps of that lawyer, that can relate, if I ask the right questions, to dollars, right? It could relate that lawyer should have $1 million book. So it's costing that lawyer X amount in salary and origination and in moving up the ladder and equity partner, over a period of time. So what's the value of that compared to my solution? The value of the long-term success compared to the dollar amount that I'm charging to help them get there. And that's one of the ways that, can help to isolate that your fees are actually very small in comparison to the large problem, potential lawsuit, potential fines, breaking of agreements, risk that's involved if they don't solve these problems. So again, it's going to come back to following the steps, because what you present in the dollars and what they're willing to invest can go back to how they are dealing with things emotionally and personally about the problems in your solution. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that effectively? Questions, Angela?
Yeah, I think I get it.
Okay, but let me say PS, very hard to do, right? What's the easier way? The easier way is just to walk in and start, pitching rates and pitching solutions and hoping that something sticks. We're taking a harder path, but a path that's going to save us time and get us a client locked up because they're going to believe we have the solutions and that we're worth the money that we're charging. Okay, so that's going to help. But let me wrap this up, and then we'll talk about that more in presentation. Think about it like a baseball, being up to bat at a baseball as a baseball player. Your job is to get to first base, right? You can't score without touching first base. So touching first base is finding compelling reasons. If you find compelling reasons, you get to first base. If you find apparent reasons and they're not really driving urgency or any kind of change, did you get to first base? Probably not. You're probably out, right? It's like I'm talking to Jeremy and Jeremy says, I can't stop making money. Every day I'm closing more and more deals. I can't stop growing. I'm running the firm and, whatever. Like, well, what am I teaching him? What am I teaching someone that knows everything and is executing on everything perfectly? All right. So I would call myself out and say, Jeremy's not a good client because he's killing it on every level. Okay. And that's where he's going to be in 6 months. That being said, now I'm on first base. I found that Jeremy's got some issues he wants to solve. And then I want to get to second. So I ask him, is he committed to solving these problems? Is this a must fix? Is he 100% committed to building his book in 2021? He says, yes. Now I'm on second base. Jeremy, are there any other decision makers other than yourself? He says, no. I clarify that. I qualify that. The answer is it's only him. Now I'm on third base. And then financially, he's willing to invest to solve the problems and put in the time, money, energy. Now we're home. And now I'm in a position to provide a presentation to him or information to help lock things up. So we're looking to decide, do we want to ask questions that identify compelling reasons to change, commitment to change, we're dealing with the right decision maker and they can pay us? Or do we want to go in and know none of that? You have to decide. You want to know things or not know things? You want to qualify or not qualify? That's what this program is setting up for you guys in sales free selling. Okay. And that's how I want you guys moving forward on every opportunity that's needs based. Okay. Before we move on to presentation, any questions about that? Make sense? Oops. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the presentation, and there's a number of moving parts. I don't know. I may not finish this today. I might just focus on, let's see how far we get, but I may want to break you guys into role play something that might take some time, but we're going to try it out. All right. So I'm going to screen share here. And if I don't screen share in the future, I can't see your chat. So just verbally say, hey, dummy, you're not sharing your screen. Help me, all right. No, you don't have to call me dummy. Okay. That's my son. That's my 14-year-old's job. All right. So you can see my screen now. All right. So in this, we're going to talk about a technique that I never wanted to feel like a technique, but it's a 1 to 10, which some of you have gone through before, but it's really a great way to identify, is it real or is it a lie? Okay. Organize or recognize the information that you gather that helps the prospect prepare for the present, helps you gather information for the presentation. We want to talk a little bit about negotiation because it's obviously a possibility that it's going to come up. And then also I talk a little bit about what's called a clincher. Okay. Now, the 1 to 10 technique is something that I've been using for a long time, not with everybody in every situation, but if I find myself in a predicament or I'm really confused, is this person real or is this person not real? Are they telling me the truth or are they telling me a lie? Are they really looking to move forward and take action, or are they just kind of messing around, kicking tires, etc.? Okay. Now, I want to also make it clear, this cannot come across as a technique. I'm saying it's a technique here, but it has to be done in such a way that it comes across like a conversation, and it's all about how you set it up. So if I go to John, hey, John, let me ask you on a 1 to 10 scale, what do we got to do to make a deal here? Right? That was my Vinny the car salesman. Apologies to the Italians. Okay. But that's not going to work. That's not going to be a beneficial way to approach this particular step. So what we need to do is we need to set it up in such a way that it comes across more as information gathering or curiosity or interest. So the first step of this is we need to define the 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 defined as a scheduled meeting with your CEO, and a 1 is you'll never meet the CEO. Where would you say we fall after our meeting today? Oh, it's a 10. He's going to meet you. I'm going to push it. No, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Well, that's a pretty good answer. What if the person says it's a 5? Well, we need to then address that. So step 2 is asking them why they chose the number they chose. And I'm going to go through a whole role play on this, guys, and set you up to do the same. Why did you choose that number? Why a 5? Why a 7? Why a 10? Get them to give you some real feedback that should, parlay into your being able to address it. The next one is, how do we move them? We want to move them from a 5, a 7 to a 10, or if their number's really low, maybe move them to a no. Okay. And then the last part is asking them what they need to see, hear, or experience to be a 10 and move the relationship forward, and then track the prospect to a 10. So some of you are listening to this going, this sounds like a technique. This feels like a technique. I would never do this in a million years. No? Yes? Maybe? Okay. This is another situation where we have to stop compartmentalizing this from other steps. You've built likability, you've built trust, they've opened up, you've gotten compelling reasons. They feel attached to you because you're understanding them, your empathy, and they want to work with you. What this is doing is tightening it up. And listen to this. This could be the most important thing I say in the whole call. Would you rather have a final meeting that's called a presentation meeting, or would you have a meeting that's a closing meeting? What's the difference between a presentation meeting and a closing meeting? I'm using my little rabbit ears. Okay, what do you guys think? What's the difference? Gary?
Presentation, you're presenting information hoping that they're going to buy into it, where the closing is you pretty much probably know that they're there and they're ready to sign, and you just have to, you know, work out the last little bit of it here and make sure that they're appreciating their commitment.
Okay, Angela, something to add?
Oh, just as Gary said, a presentation meeting sounds like, you know, sort of neutral, where a closing meeting is, you know, you're not in a sales or informational setting anymore.
Yep. So think about this. If you can get them to attend before your presentation, not only do you know exactly what to present, but they're committing to saying yes once that presentation is provided and it exceeds expectations or meets expectations. So I hope you guys are taking notes. I'm gonna run through a role play with Rob. Okay, bringing Rob back into the mix. And again, this will be cooperative. So again, you have to take into consideration, everybody, that Rob has just spilled his guts to me about his future, his problems, his challenges. We are connected now, therapist and patient, if you will, okay? And I've gone through all 4 qualifiers: compelling reasons, commitment, decision maker, financial. Everything is laid out. And then I say to Rob the following. So Rob, I just want to make sure I'm putting this all together and preparing to, you know, help move this forward if it makes sense. All right. So I just want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being defined as, you know, you want to move forward and you want to work with me and get going. And a 1 is, Steve, I hate your guts. I'm going to hang up on you now. Click. Where would you say you fall between those 2 points?
I'd say I'm close. I'm at like an 8 probably. I just need a little bit more information.
Okay, and you chose 8. Give me the reasoning on the 8.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, maybe I could use some more information as to how this is going to benefit me and why this is the best economic decision for me. I'm looking at it from a, you know, cost benefit situation, and I like you and I think you can do a lot of great things, but I just need that little push to get there.
Okay, so it's really about cost benefit, investment ROI, like how is this going to really show you an upside? Is that accurate?
Yes, that's
Okay.
accurate.
So to move you from that 8 to a 10, there are certain things that I'd like to put out in front of you that I think would be helpful for you to see, hear, experience. What specifically are you looking for then as it relates to getting that information? How would you like to take in that information from me to know that the ROI is there for you to put the time in and invest here?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you could give me some information on past successes you've had, you know, maybe, you know, some endorsements you've had from other clients, some actual real life experiences, some
Sure.
actual numbers, you know, how you've helped other lawyers increase their book. You know, has a past lawyer doubled their book in a year? You know, just maybe some more information like that would be helpful.
And you know what I found to be really helpful, Rob, is having someone like yourself that's interested in that information hear it directly from past clients that I've worked with before. So I guess if I was to set you up on a couple of blind dates with, let's say, 2 of my clients that are in a similar space in litigation and went through the program and really got a big ROI out of it because they executed like I know you will. And let's say you heard all the right things from them, the ROI's there, it all works the way that we're talking. At that point, you're happy. At that point, where would you be on that 1 to 10 scale as it relates to moving forward?
That would move me to a 10.
That would move you to a 10.
That's
So
what
at
I
that
would
point,
need
let's
to move
let's
to a
get
10.
going.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. So and scene. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Rob. So
Yeah, thank
that
you.
is exactly how it's going to work. Okay. So what am I presenting to Rob in a formal way? Am I sending him all my materials? Am I sending him video? Am I going through the details of my contract? What am I going through with Rob to get this locked up?
Exactly what he wants to get to 10.
All
And
I'm
nothing
doing
more.
is setting him up on 2 dates for 2 10 or 15-minute conversations that I know are going to go well because I'm hooking him up with people that, quite frankly, I mean, you know, the people that execute in this program, they're all going to say the same thing. They got great return on investment. That's all they should say. Okay. So for me, this is making my life very easy because I'm not spinning my wheels, taking him through a PowerPoint. I'm not sending him books. I'm not going through anything other than exactly what he said he needs to see, hear, or experience. You obviously all have to put this into your own space. And that's what you're going to do in the next 10 minutes. I'd like each of you to go through this one time. And it's very important that you follow the steps. This is not a time to be Mr. Improv. This is not a time to join Second City. I'm giving you the language. The language works. You can make it your own. You can adapt to the setup, explain why you're asking a 1 to 10. What's the setup? That's okay, right? As a lawyer, I'm always curious to sort of know where I am, and I want to make sure that I make this relevant for you. So I just have one more question to kind of identify that. Is that okay? Sure. On a scale of 1 to 10, and then you define what the 10 is. Do you define a 10 as a done deal when you know you've got 3 other stages or steps to go through, or other decision makers? No. You have to make the 10 what it really would be: a next step, another decision maker, a locked up piece of business. You decide based on what you know so far. So I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to break you guys up into a 10-minute. Do we need 10 minutes? Maybe not. Maybe we need 6 minutes. And I'm gonna break you guys into groups of 2, and I'm gonna have you go through this and just practice. So again, hit all the steps. This isn't, like I said. All right, where's my breakout rooms? Okay, so create. How many are this? Okay, all right. I actually did this right. Who'd have thought? All right, 5. I'm going to give you guys 6 minutes. All right, here we go. I'll see you in 6. Be cooperative.
All right, so, looks like Steve's joining us. Hey, Steve.
Hey.
So do we choose who does what, or do you want to choose for us, or how do you want to do
No,
that?
just Rob, why don't you just do it? Just, you don't even have to tell
sounds
Alex
good.
what his deal is. Just go into it and
Right.
just
Perfect.
you'll wing it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, Alex, it's been great talking to you, and I think, that we could definitely be a good fit. You have a real need here. I don't know, like, let's try to figure out where we're at on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being you're ready to, sign an engagement letter and move forward. Where would you say that you are at this point?
6.
A 6. Okay. Well, and, what would you need to, see or hear or maybe experience from me in order to move that to a 10 and move forward together?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about it, your experiences having dealt with my type of situation and how you handled it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, definitely, I'm happy to go through some more, war stories and tell you about some different, different times that I've handled your issue. And, I could maybe even send you an email, sort of listing out some past results that I've had that have been, very good for my clients. And, if you want to spend some more time on this call, or we could get on another one, I could go through that with you. Do you have time now to do it, or would you like to do it in the future?
Well, let's set up a call for next week, for a month from now.
Okay, a month from now.
Yeah, I said cooperative.
Thanks, Alex. Steve, I'm moving this guy to a no.
Yeah, I'm going to move him to a no by taking him off the call right now.
Good move.
Alex, take a walk, kid.
Whatever.
All right,
Well,
but again, just to go through the steps, Rob, this is, again, after you've accomplished everything that happens in the meeting, this is just another opportunity for you to kind of tighten things up if it's set up the right way.
Mhm.
And I like the way you set it up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Perfect.
Now
Yeah.
you get to turn around and be a jerk to Alex, so that'll work out.
All right, hit it, Alex. Let's see what you got.
Here we go. All right, Rob. Well, we're almost done with our chat. Thanks for making time. But one last question. So scale of 1 to 10 after everything we've talked about today, 10 being wanting to engage me. Where do you think you are in the process?
I'd say I'm at like a 9. I mean, I'm close.
9.
It's
Okay,
close.
that sounds good. Why'd you pick that number?
Well, I'm at a 9 because I'm still not sure that I even need a lawyer for this problem, or if I'm better off handling it on my own. I know lawyers are very expensive. I just want to make sure that that spending this kind of money, which is a big deal, is really the right thing to do at this point.
Okay. Is there anything I can do anything I can share with you that would help move that 9 to a 10?
I don't know. I suppose, if we could just, quickly go over, well, what's the likely outcome going to be if I don't hire you versus, if I do hire you, and in the end, is it going to be more of a benefit for me to, pay you to address this issue, or is that just going to cost me more than it's worth to move forward? Just getting the cost aspect of it, past the line would help me a lot in getting to a 10.
It will cost you more to do it yourself.
Sold. I'm the 10.
But the other thing is, Alex,
it will cost you more to do it yourself.
Alex, the other thing in the role play, which would really throw Rob under the bus a little, is to go back to the fake discovery that you never did, but in this role play, let's assume you did. And you can say, Rob, you were so kind to share with me the troubles that you've had with your past employer, and how they basically, ruined your life, and they took hundreds of $1,000s out of your pocket that would pay for your family's, life, expenses and how you're living, and you share a lot of tragedy with me, and I appreciate that. And I guess that all goes to help me ask this question. And I apologize if it seems a bit formal, but it helps me to understand, kind of where we are on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the, high urgency to take action and hire a lawyer like me to start to represent you. And a 1 is no interest at all. I'm just going to figure it out on my own. Where would you say you fall in based on those two milestones?
Yeah.
And then he says a 9, and he's not going to come back and complain about, he's going to say, I'm a little concerned about the money because of this, that, and the other. And you could say anything else. He says no. Say, well, look, if I can figure out a way to help you get that money back, and we can work out the money so that, I don't want to take food out of your kids' mouths, and we can work that out together. At that point, where would you be? And he says, oh, if you can do that for me, Alex, then I'm a 10. And that's a more realistic example of how this can roll out if it's handled in, again, a cooperative and also conversational way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, guys, we're going to come back.
All right.
See you, Rob.
See you, Alex.
All right. So before you guys say anything, I just want to say, if that went horribly wrong, that's the way it normally goes. This is another situation. Now, I've said to you guys before, I don't ask you to memorize a lot of things. All right. The agenda, Jeremy, right? Definitely. Got to memorize it. Got to know it backwards, forwards. You got to be able to spit it out like breathing. This is another one where if you don't have it memorized or practiced or rehearsed in a way that you're comfortable, in a way that's going to resonate with the other person, I wouldn't use it. So that means you may have to do this 3, 4, 5 times in front of a mirror with your spouse, with me. If you call me up and you say, Steve, 1 to 10, just call me up out of the blue, 1 to 10, I'll say go, and you just do it. And I will be cooperative. I'll be your buddy, and I'll help you get through it. And I'll give you feedback, because it's got to come across super smooth. It can never come across like Vinny the car salesman, and it's all about your tone. Here, I'll share my screen for one more. Well, I don't have to share my screen. It's got to be about your tonality. It's got to be about your pace. It's got to be, most importantly, about what are called softening statements. What's a softening statement?
That's like when you lead into this and you say, look, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and I want to make sure that, I get you moving forward, or we move forward together if there's a fit. And then you launch into whatever it is that you're going to actually ask them.
It's everything that makes a conversation, and not where you're just drilling people with questions. Gary, 1 to 10, go. Are you a fit? Go. You can't do that. right? And you can't come across like, what do we got to do to make a deal here? That's the second time I did that imitation, by the way. So you guys can give me a hard time about it. But the point, but you know, I know some car salespeople and they talk just like that for some reason. But the idea here is that we need to have the setup right. We need to make sure we're converting one thing to the next so that it really flows. So what I would suggest, and this is all being recorded, go back and listen to the recording of me doing it 2 or 3 times. Play it over and over. Take notes. Write. If you have to transcribe and write the whole thing out because you like the way I did it, do it. If you say, I don't like the way Steve did that, that would never work for me. And here, let me do this real quick since we have a few minutes. I'm going to do this, not as me. I'm going to do this as a lawyer. So you'll have a better way to kind of follow up with this. Okay. Now, again, for the role play, Alex right away went into being tough, not cooperative at all. Okay. We want to be cooperative for the purpose of allowing me to practice the language and how I'm going to get through this unscathed. Later on, step 2, we can beat the junk out of each other and have a good time with it. Okay. But for right now, I want this to be cooperative, especially because I've done the hard work. So in this case, I'm going to be Alex and I'm talking to Alex, who's now going to be cooperative. So unmute yourself and be cooperative, Alex. Okay. Which means that we've been through the ringer together. You have been fired from your job. And it was definitely around, you know, sexual harassment because, you know, you're a hot piece of meat and somebody was going after you. We'll leave it at that. So you got fired. There's been a ton of problems. There's all kinds of money on the table here. We've had that conversation. So I'm going to say, you know, Alex, I appreciate your being so honest and sharing with me everything that's gone down with your in past employer. Must have been incredibly challenging. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of take the temperature of where we are and make sure that we're both on exactly the same page to decide if we want to move forward together. Okay. So let me just ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is you feel strongly that you want to litigate, that you want to go after that money and you know, make sure that you do that. And you want to do that with me. And that's a 10. And a 1 is let's just let bygones be bygones and just kind of let things drift into the ether. Where would you say you fall on those 2 points?
I think 8.
Okay. 8's a pretty good number. Just out of curiosity, you know, why an 8? What led you to that specific number?
Well, everything I went through at work has made me really angry. So, I mean, I'm motivated to do something, but at the same time, you know, reliving that situation over the next year or 2, which is how long litigation usually goes. I mean, that's going to be painful too.
Yep.
That's going to take a big commitment from me. So I'm just not, I don't know if I'm up for that.
Okay. But I also know that we've had a number of conversations about the money, right? And how you're really strapped these days and how, you know, they owe you all this money and you have to sort of weigh out, you know, what it's going to do for your family and how you're going to feel winning an award if that's the direction it goes versus just walking away from the, you know, $300,000-$400,000 that you're due and what that represents to your family and, you know, in the pain that you're going to have to go through. Is it worth doing that? So let me ask you this to kind of help identify how we move forward. What types of things would you like to have me share with you, see, hear, experience to identify whether this really makes sense to move forward?
Yeah, I need to hear how you as my lawyer would help lighten the burden on that process.
Okay.
It's a tough thing to go through.
Okay.
So I just want to know how you'd be able to step in and shoulder some of that burden.
Yep. And I'm happy to do that. Is there anything else outstanding that is important to you to sort of have me share with you?
No, I mean, once I'm satisfied with that, I'll pay you my 50,000 retainer and we'll be ready to go.
Okay. I'm glad it's only 50. So here's what I guess I'm suggesting is if we can have another 10-minute conversation and I can give you some specific examples of people that I've worked with that have gone through the exact same thing and how I've shouldered that brunt of that emotional traumatic thing and really limited their exposure and you were satisfied and happy with what I'm sharing with you at that point, where would we be?
Better. I mean, we'd be where we need to be to move forward.
Okay, and what would that, on that 1 to 10 scale?
A 10.
A 10. Okay, great. So Alex, let me share with you then what I've done in the past. All right, so timeout and scene. So that was an example of me being an attorney playing Alex's role, and Alex being very cooperative. Thank you, young man. And how this can work so that all I'm presenting is exactly what Alex needs to see. Or am I connecting with clients? No. Am I sharing my documents with him? Am I going through case studies? No. I'm just giving him a 10-minute verbal response to how I've done this. And I know he'll be happy after hearing that. And that's it. I'm getting my $50,000 retainer and the contingency on the back end, and we're going to rock and roll. Okay. So your homework for next week is to practice the 1 to 10 to get it comfortable, to get it to the point where you could bring it up at the end of a meeting once you've qualified them on the 4 points, that this is something that's going to allow you to walk into a closing meeting or get you to a next step with a good reason, versus just letting things end and hoping that it continues, or hoping that the next step is the right next step. Okay. Before we wrap up, any questions, concerns about this particular technique that is not a technique?
Steve, right before you asked the sort of what do you need to see here experience question, what were you doing there? It seemed like you were sort of going back to some things that you learned in discovery and sort of talking about that for a while before you asked that question.
Yep. So what I was doing, John, was really setting up by utilizing the notes, the information that I've gathered from Alex in the meeting so far. Remember, this isn't a compartment that's separate from everything. This is right in the process. And I'm going to leverage, in a nice way, the words that Alex used, the cost that Alex has incurred, the emotional state, not to have him relive it, but to drive the urgency to move him to that 10 based on me providing him what he needs to see here experience. So I encourage you guys to practice it without that, but you can certainly use that if you need to as a way to make this, again, more of a conversation versus something that's a technique or something that's just following the steps without having to occasionally call an audible if you need to. Okay. Any other questions? All right, guys, we've got 3 minutes left before 9:30. I just want to hear one takeaway from today. We covered a number of different points, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Just one thing, Gary?
You just need to practice you call them the transition steps, the softening steps, just to make it seem seamless.
Yeah, and again, this could be
Or
used for anything, moving someone forward in a step. This could be securing a speaking engagement. I mean, you can use this with your children, right? We do. On a scale of 1 to 10, Jimmy, how badly do you need that ice cream or whatever? I mean, we use 1 to 10s our whole life. It's just we're using this as a way to tighten things up. Okay, Alex?
The 1 to 10, I think, was helpful. I think it drills down on what additional steps you need to take to get someone to retain you, and you do it in a way where they just tell you what you need to do.
Well, here's another way to think about it. Who's writing the presentation? You're physically right. You're physically going to write, or Alex, you go.
No, I guess I am. I mean,
well, you are physically or verbally, but who's really telling you what they need to see or experience? They're really creating the pitch, which is completely adverse, or not adverse, but like converse to what we think it is. We think we have to make this long, elaborate dog and pony show presentation. We don't.
Yeah, it's a nice way to say, what do I have to do to get this deal done?
But not to ever say those words.
Yeah, of course
exactly.
Not. But it's just a nice way to do it.
Good. Rob?
Sorry, I had to unmute there. Yeah, I mean, obviously I found the 1 to 10 helpful, and I'm going to need a lot of practice with that, but I also thought that it was helpful to go over qualifying your potential clients financially. because you could get through all the steps and find somebody that really needs you, but either can't afford you or won't pay your rate, in which case you should move them to a no, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. I mean, I think that's, it might be a fast step, but it's very important because that's why we all do this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta qualify.
Don't realize it.
financially.
You may not realize it, Rob, when you're chasing after a piece of business for a year,
Mhm.
that they just don't have the money, right? They just don't have the money. They don't have access to it. It's not whatever. And they just don't ever share that because people don't want to talk about that, right? So identifying it, that could be a huge time savings if you could identify it and move them to a no, or identify that they're getting the money in a month, and then that makes sense to follow up then.
Just a quick anecdote on that. I actually
Sure.
just had this happen to me where somebody hired me. I thought he kind of lied to me. I thought he had the money. He paid me like a $5,000 retainer. I burned through that and a trial was coming up. It was like a very last minute thing. And all of a sudden he said, well, I don't have any more money, but would you keep representing me? Like, no, I won't. And I wouldn't have wasted the last 2 weeks if I had known you didn't have any money. So it is important to figure that out up front.
Yeah, I'm not giving you steps for your health. I mean, this maybe for your mental health, right? But each step has a point that's getting you to the reality, to the honest truth, and that's where the business is part of it. That's where part of the business is. But it's important to know. It's a great story. Angela?
I think just the importance of really practicing and thinking through the questions and being able to be smooth in the process.
Yeah, again, it's all about how practiced you can be and make this a conversation, make this two friends having an important conversation about solving a problem together, not a technique or steps. When everything has been worked out, it should really feel like that. Okay, Al?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think just the importance of repetitions in anything you do. So this is just another one where just getting more repetitions, whether it's practicing on your own or with others, or actually getting out and doing it.
Yep, great. John?
I appreciated the conversation about the financials and the different ways to go about it, asking them what their past experiences are and, what their budget to solve the problem might be. I thought those were helpful.
Good. And Jeremy?
It's always good for me to, whenever we do something that we practice and we have to really get down, to try to make it like how I would talk if I were just talking with someone.
Yep.
That, like, make the 1 to 10 is a little bit more difficult to make it like you talk. Like, I wouldn't ever say on a scale to 1 to 10 to like I say it to my kids, but I don't say it to people.
Right.
But like, I like what you say, Steve, where it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is you hate me and 10 is we want to, you're my best friend and we want to move forward. That's more like how I would speak.
Yeah. So I think, where I say, memorize what I mean, you need to make this your own. You need to get comfortable within your own skin and how you're going to roll something like this out. But I think if you can get it real and get it honest and handle it in a way where it's going to come across as, I'm just looking for information to help you, because that's really what it does. It also identifies lies, but that's a different story. But that's what it can do. And so I highly encourage you guys to practice this and have it ready for next week. Because I think what we'll do is next week at the beginning of class, we're going to practice this and give you guys an opportunity to do that. All right. And Shuki, real quick, last word.
Yeah, last word. Great takeaway from Gary to define the 10. I thought he did a phenomenal job just defining the 10 and that scale of 1 to 10 technique.
Okay. Terrific. All right, guys. So you have your marching orders. You have a big week in front of you to really get some activity done and build your businesses. And I'm here for you if you need anything. So email me, call me, whatever, and we'll talk. But have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you guys next week too.
Thanks. See you guys next week.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
See you guys.